Good afternoon, everybody. Today's build is going to be an old Estes classic. This is called a Yankee. I remember building these way back in the day when I was really young, back in the '80s, and they was always just been a killer rocket, timeless rocket. Flies on A, B, and C series motors. Maximum altitude is about 1,700 feet or 518 meters. The entire rocket stands 11 inches tall or 27.9 centimeters and weighs in at zero point 0.4 ounces or 12 grams. The recovery on this rocket is going to be a streamer. Usuals, paper tube, balsa wood fins, plastic nose cone. It's a pretty simple rocket. Yeah, let's go ahead and get started. All right. Tools you're going to need today and materials to build are going to be pretty simple. You've got a sheet of 220 grit sandpaper. We've got some straight Elmer's glue, standard white glue. We've got some Gorilla Super Glue, 2 straight pins, an X-Acto knife or a hobby knife, 3-way ruler, and a pencil. Very simple. All right, upon opening up the bag, we've got the usual stuff that goes along with a rocket of this size. You have a paper body tube. You have an engine spacer, and what this will do is this will help you set the distance down the tube that you put the retaining ring for the actual engine. You got your nose cone, and then the back side of the nose cone that the shock cord attaches to. You've got some balsa wood available to cut some fins, your streamer material, launch lug, shock cord, and then your decals. And the decals for this are the sticker type. They're not the water slide type. Also your instructions. So let's get started. First thing that we got to work on is we have to attach the rear piece of the nose cone, which connects to the shock cord, to the actual nose cone itself. Now, one important thing to remember is that when they manufacture these, sometimes they might have a little burr. It's kind of hard to see in the video, but right here on the inside lip where it connects inside of the nose cone, there's a little bit of a rough piece. And so what we want to do is gently take your hobby knife and just shave that off. Take your time. There's no rush. You don't want to hurt yourself. But what we want to do is we just want to make sure we get all of that out of there. So it makes a nice smooth fit. Nothing on the other side. Okay. Now, for connecting plastic pieces together, you can use white glue, but it's recommended that you use either some type of plastic model cement, or in this case, what I'm using is just standard Gorilla Glue, which is just your normal super glue. Now, one thing you want to remember is that don't put the glue on the piece that pushes into the nose cone. You're going to have a lot that's going to spill out the sides. If you apply the glue on the inside of the nose cone and allow it to sit in there, when you push your back piece in, it's not going to push out. So it'll make a nice clean joint. So what we'll do is just get a little bit of glue to come out here. Doesn't take much. And we're just going to add it. Glue's a little stubborn today. Glue doesn't want to come out. There we go. Just a little bit. Doesn't take much. And if you're having a hard time getting the glue to come out, just go ahead and cut the tip off. Just like that. That'll definitely help it come out. This bottle's kind of old, so glue around the inside. And that'll do it right there. So all we do now is just insert that rear piece and give it a little bit of a turn too. And what that'll help do is just work the glue around the joint. After a while, you'll start to feel it get a little bit tighter and tighter. That means that the glue is starting to set. Then what we're going to do is just set that aside. On to the next piece. All right, step 2, what we want to do is we want to start working on getting the fins cut out. Now, they've provided a couple pieces of balsa, and they've given us a fin guide that we can cut out from the instruction plans. And what we're going to do is we're going to put that on this balsa wood and transfer the shape and then make the cut. So the first thing we want to do, we're going to use a ruler and an X-Acto knife for this. So we're going to take, here's our piece right here that we want to get. Lay our ruler down just so you can see the black line and cut. Nice straight line, just like that. Okay. And make sure when you make the cut to go past the end. So if the end is here, and on this corner, I've cut just beyond that. That way I can make a clean cut all the way around. We don't want to try to cut right up to the corner and then cut from there on, because that'll kind of booger up the corner, and we don't want that to happen. So again, we put our ruler down, and we're going to drag straight across with the knife. Same thing, extending the cut beyond the line. And then here, we're going to start the cut before it actually needs to contact that line. So over here, pull straight across, like so. And then the last piece is the end. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to grab our pencil. Make sure we got a sharp pencil. You always want to use pencil because it's easy to see, and then when you use it on the balsa wood, it doesn't really leave too much behind. Sometimes when you have, you're using, say, pen, then what happens is when you go to primer and paint your rocket, you'll see those lines. And so always use pencil. Now, the important thing about this is that we want to make sure that the grain of the balsa wood goes in the same direction as the fin itself. And you can see on the piece of paper, it has a little bit of a grain line, and it gives you an idea. Okay, set this on there like this. Okay, we're going to use one piece of balsa wood for 2 fins. Actually, sorry, one piece of balsa wood for 3 fins, because this is a 3-fin rocket. So we're going to take our pencil, gently trace, just like that. Come across, and then your third side, like so. And then you've got your piece. Do the same thing over here. One more. Now, if these are slightly different in shape, that's okay, because what's going to happen is we're going to put these together with the straight pins that I showed you earlier. And then we're going to use that, all 3 of those fins put together like that, to sand them down to the same length. So what I'm doing here is I'm just going ahead, going back to that line, putting my ruler on it, and since I'm cutting with the grain, it comes off relatively easy. Same thing here. And then when you're cutting cross grain, meaning that the grain is going in this direction, but you're going to cut against it, what you want to do is line yourself up, and then instead of trying to make one pass, make multiple passes. And what this does is this allows for a nice clean cut, and you're not really sawing through that wood. This should just pop right out, just like that. There's fin number 1. It's real simple. Come over here for fin number 2. We line up on our line, just like so. Same thing here. Cutting across the grain. So remember, make multiple cuts. Take your time. There's no rush. Okay. And then our last piece, which is right there. Get my knife in there, straight in, and there's our last piece. Okay, so we have 2 fins. What I'm going to do, since I have one fin cut out already, I'm going to use that fin as a nice hard surface to start, just like that. Okay, pretty simple. Come across. And then there's our 3rd fin. Same thing. Go ahead and take the ruler and cut down your lines that you just made. And then once again, when cutting cross grain, take your time and make nice, easy cuts. balsa wood about this thick. Takes about 4 or 5 passes, and then it's done. Okay. Now, the next thing what we want to do is we want to take these 3 fins, and we're going to put them together. And they're similar in size, but they have some differences, right? And so what you're going to do is put them together, line them up on all edges to where they're really close. And then take a nice straight pin. And what you're going to do is push it through just like so. So what that is that's going to hold those fins together. So when we go and sand them, you'll have a nice uniform shape, and all the fins will be the same shape. So you've got 3 fins. We've put them together after cutting them out with 2 straight pins, just like so, and then we're going to get to the sanding. Okay, now I've already done a little bit of sanding, but we've pinned the fins together, and what we want to do is we want to start with the longest edge first. Okay, it's important that we do this correctly, because what this will do is this will give a nice uniform dimension to all 3 fins on the rocket, meaning that they're all the same size. And so what I've done is I've taken the long leg first, and I place it down on the sandpaper, and I pull in one direction. I don't want to go in both directions. One direction will make sure that you're not going to hang up, and sometimes when you hang up, the balsa wood will break. But give it about 8 to 10 pulls in one direction. Push the sandpaper or the sawdust off and take a look at it. And if you have a nice even edge where everything is straight and there's no gap or dip or anything in there, that means that you're finished. And what you do is you go to the next side, next long leg. Same thing. Hold it firm. Hold it straight up, 90 degrees. Okay, you don't want to angle it like this or angle like that. You want to hold it straight up and pull it 8 to 10 times. Give it some firm pressure, but not too much, because you don't want the wood to break. And then same thing. Take the sawdust off and you have a nice even edge. Okay. Next long leg is going to be the side that actually glues to the rocket. Okay. And here I've got a little bit of one side is a little bit higher than the other. So when I put it down, if I make sure that I'm holding it straight up and down on the short side, I'm going to see a little bit of a gap, and I know that it's straight up and down. Same thing, 8 to 10 pulls. Give it some nice, even pressure. Okay. You can go a little bit faster if you want. Wipe the sawdust off. And there we go. We've got a nice even side. Then the last side is the short side, the bottom of the rocket fin. It's going to be a little bit trickier. When you have a shorter edge like this, sometimes it'll want to kind of stutter and go like that across. So just make sure, same thing, even pressure. And this time around, a good tip is don't give it too much pressure, just a little bit. And that'll help get everything evened up. So if you have a longer fin than the other, what that'll do is that'll help that piece get taken down to match the other sides. And there you go, just like that. So when you remove these pins, you've got 3 even fins, just like so. All right. Now, the next step is we want to take the fins and we want to be able to bevel off the edges. Okay? It's real simple, especially when you have small, easy to work with balsa like this. The side that you do not want to bevel is going to be the side that contacts the rocket. So when you see the body tube here, okay, this is the side that's going to contact. All right? So we want to leave this straight and leave that alone. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll bevel the front side, the bottom, and the rear side. Okay, the way that we go about doing that is you want to take your sandpaper, put your rocket fin down on it, if I can get it to go here. Hold it at about a 45-degree angle, okay? And see how I have 4 fingers on it? I have 2 fingers on the edge that's being sanded, and then I have a finger over here and a thumb over here that's holding it in place. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back and forth. I'm going to do my best to keep everything even pressure. And you're going to hold that piece of wood at about a 45-degree angle to the sandpaper. And what that'll do is that'll give you a nice bevel right here. Okay? Do the same thing to the opposite side. Okay? 45 degrees. And back and forth. Okay? And you want, it's kind of hard to see on the angle on the camera, but you want the bevels to match. And so I can go a little bit more on this side to kind of even it out. And one way to check that is to look at the bevel on the end of the fin, and you can see whether or not it's too much to one direction or the other. So I'm going to add a little bit more on, or take a little bit more off of this side, just like so. And there you go. Wipe it off, and there's a nice clean bevel. Same thing with the other side, the bottom side of the fin. Some people will argue that you don't have to do this step. The bottom side of the fin doesn't need to be beveled. But if you ask me, I think not only does it look good, but there is something to be said about the trailing edge of the aerodynamics. And so the rear end of the rocket is just as important as the front end of the rocket. And so you want to make sure everything is nice and clean. And plus, it gives you a sense of pride in a nice clean rocket. There we go, just like so. Maybe a little bit on this side. And what we're going to do after this is we're going to bevel with a small piece of sandpaper and kind of take everything down and make it look a little bit more smooth. On the bottom side, doesn't take much. About one drag in each direction, and you got a nice clean bevel. And then what we'll do is we'll come back and we'll finish these up and clean these edges up a little bit more, so it looks a little bit more clean. Because right now you can see the line where the flat side of the wood and the bevel start, so we want to be able to clean that up. So I'm going to go ahead and jump away and take care of that real quick, and then I'll be right back. All right, we've finished up our fins. All the sanding is complete, and they're ready to be prepped to attach to the body tube. So what we're going to do is we want to cut this out right here, and this is the fin marking guide. Okay, so same thing. Take your ruler, go ahead and cut this out. What we're going to do is we're going to take this and wrap it around the body tube, and then that will give us a guide to mark the fins. And so we'll get this out of the way. And so on this piece of paper, if you can see it, you have fin, 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 and the little LL means launch lug. This little spot right here is going to be the overlap. So you're going to take the fin and get your pencil, or I'm sorry, take the body tube and get your pencil, and wrap this around so that the lines meet. Okay. And what you're going to do is just leave a little bit here on the bottom of the body tube. That way you can make your fin marking just like that. Okay. And there you go. And here's your launch lug. And just put a little L next to that. Okay. And then what we're going to do now is we're going to take this, and we're going to go up to the door jamb of any door in your house and just set it inside the door jamb, and then you'll use the pencil to mark it. And there's instructions in the sheet how to do that. It's real simple. So we'll be right back. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and start attaching the fins. Now, the disclaimer about attaching the fins. Right now in the game, if you're just starting working into models, don't be so concerned right away, about making the fins ultra straight, meaning you don't necessarily need to go and get a fin marking guide and a fin gluing guide. I've been doing this way for years. Certainly I have used gluing guides before, but I've never had a problem with this. And all I do is I put a thin bead of just tiny, it doesn't even have to be all the way around, just a thin bead of Gorilla Glue, super glue. And then I attach it to the tube right on top of that fin line. And what I've done is I've extended the markings for the fin a little bit further past the wood of the fin itself. That way I can see and I can use them as reference and kind of guide. And so what you do is go ahead, stick it on there, just let it hang out for a minute, and then go ahead and just visually line things up. And you can see that the fin, if you look at it like this, the fin is 90 degrees to the tube, it's not bent over like this or bent over like that. And so the point where the fin attaches is nice and square. And I check on those lines, and they look okay. I have to move it just a little bit like that. And just hold it in place until that glue sets up, and then you'll be okay. A little bit off there. That's okay. And there you go, just like so. I like to use super glue when I'm fitting the fins, just because it makes for a fast fit up, and then I can come back and I can use white glue to make my fillets later on. And that's pretty much it. I'm going to go ahead and work on the other two fins and put the launch lug on, and then I'll see you in a minute. Now, the next thing that we have in order here, we have 2 steps left. We have to go ahead and put the engine stop inside of the body tube, and then we have to attach the streamer and the shock cord, and that's about it. So what we're going to do here is they provided a yellow tube which represents the size of the motor that this rocket can receive. And so what I've done is I've went ahead and I've placed a mark at a 1/2 inch from one end and a 1/4 inch from one end, and I've test fit this tube inside the rocket. Now, one thing that I did a little bit differently than the instructions say is I've raised my fins up about a 1/4 inch from the rear end of the rocket. And the reason why I've done this is that this makes it easier for me to get in there and get that motor out. I don't have so much fin in the way. And so getting back to it, like I said, I put a 1/2 inch mark here and a 1/4 inch mark here. And this is just a test fit and see what the motor looks like at a 1/2 inch and a 1/4 inch. And I think a 1/4 inch is about, the right size. Sometimes it gets a little difficult to get the motors out because when things heat up, they obviously expand. And so sometimes that motor can be a little bit, difficult to get out. But I wanted to make sure that I had enough room on the end to get it out. So I think we're going to go with a 1/4 inch on the bottom. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take this spacer, put it inside of the rocket, put some glue in there, and then push it up to that distance back inside the rocket. That way when we put a motor in, it sits right where I want it to sit. So we're going to take some white glue for this. Before we were using super glue to attach the fins and the launch lug. But for white glue, this is going to be the ticket with white glue. And the reason why is because it doesn't dry right away, and we need a little bit of time to get this back in there. We don't want to put super glue in there, then try to push it back, and then it gets stuck. And so go ahead and put the tip of the glue in as far as it'll go, and just give it a little bit of a bead, just like so. And that should be it. And check it. And then go ahead and put your ring in. And then push it on back until you get to that magic 1/4 inch mark. And then go ahead and pull this out. And that's it. And then when you look inside the tube, you'll see rocket is in there. Or I'm sorry, not the rocket, the retaining ring is in there, and all is well. Now, one important thing that I always do is I take the rocket now and I set it upright. Okay, if any glue happens to, there to be any extra in there, I don't want that glue to get down into the motor mount. I want that to stay away from it. And so what that's going to do is that glue will travel down the body tube, and it'll eventually just dry up and it'll be fine. So, but it'll keep it away from where the motor goes, because if you have some glue that ends up kind of bubbling over into past the motor mount and you try to stick a motor in there, it may not go in as far as you want it to. So we want to keep that glue out of there. All right, and that's it for this step. All right, and now what we have left for the final preparation of the rocket is we have our recovery system. Now this is going to be what they call a streamer recovery, which means it has a small body tube and you have a lot of altitude, and so we want to be able to see it, but there's no reason to really put a parachute on it because the rocket isn't that heavy. And so it'll free fall with this marker coming down, and you can see where it's going to land and whatnot. It's real simple. We've taken the little attachment piece that we have in the instruction booklet, and we've cut that out. And all it is just a piece of paper that you fold twice over, and it gives you an anchor point for your shock cord. And what we're going to do is we're going to put a little bit of super glue in this. We want this part of it to dry kind of fast. Put it right down the center, just like so. Then you're going to lay a shock cord in there, just like that. Okay. Take the smallest side first and fold it up. This is the number 1 side. Fold it up to number 2. And make sure you keep your shock cord centered, right? And what's going to happen is we're going to fold number 3 over top of this one, just like so. Maybe put a little bit more glue on here to kind of help it stay. Just a couple dabs, just like that. Fold your 3rd side over. And there's your anchor point for your shock cord, just like so. And we'll just hold on to it for a minute while that glue sets up. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take some more glue. I'm going to bend this just like so. Give it kind of a little bit of a bend so it has a curve to it, right? And then we're going to glue this eventually inside the body tube. Now, the streamer, what I found works really well with the smaller streamers is to make yourself a loop, just fold it over on itself and put a staple in it. What this will do is this will keep the streamer attached to itself, just like so. Got a staple in it. We're going to feed the shock cord through, just like so. And about halfway up, you know. You don't want it too close to the nose cone. You don't want it too close to the body. So about half the length of the shock cord. And then what we're going to do is put a little bit of glue. Same thing. Inside there, just like that. Just a little dab. And another little dab. And then just push that down. And what that'll do is that'll help that streamer stay connected. And that's it. On the other end, all you have to do is just tie your nose cone. But we're going to save that for later because we're going to leave this part out and paint the nose cone separately. So eventually this will tie in. And then after we've painted, of course, and then it'll be ready to fly. But for right now, since we want to keep this nose cone separate when we paint, we're going to go ahead and not attach this assembly. And that's it. All right, folks, and there you have it. Essentially, the rocket is complete. You could fly this rocket as is right now. There's a few things you want to do to it. You want to definitely add some fillets in on the fins where they meet the body tube, and as well on the launch lug. Obviously, you have to attach the recovery, but when this rocket dries up and we put the recovery in, it's ready to go. Look for the fillet videos and other tips at Missile Kids, so definitely subscribe. You can find me on Instagram as well. And never stop going high. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks for watching.